Hello and welcome to this Gorilla Guide webinar on selecting the right SaaS backup tool. This event is produced by Actual Tech Media, and on today's webisode, you'll hear from experts at Spanning, Druva, and Clumio. We've got a really cool show lined up for you today. This is our third Gorilla Guide webisode, and these just continue to increase in popularity. These are fast-paced, educational, and fun events, and we really appreciate you joining us. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping information that you need to be aware of. We do have a number of prizes that we'll be announcing on today's webisode. I'll talk about those in just a moment. Like I said, we want this to be educational, so we have the questions box on the left-hand side of your audience console, and we encourage you to ask questions throughout today's presentation. We'll be doing dedicated Q&A sessions with the panelists later in the event. We also want this to be a social event, and we have a hashtag that you can use when you tweet directly from the console using the Twitter icon on the bottom of your screen. And finally, we have resources that are in the Handouts tab that I encourage you to check out, links and PDFs that have been recommended by today's expert presenters. The prizes on today's webisode are 3 $100 Amazon gift cards, and we'll be announcing these prizes throughout the event. You must be live in attendance to qualify. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. If you're watching this on demand, of course, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Now, through this Gorilla Guide webisode, in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club, we're supporting the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund and the One Tree Planted charity. We encourage you to visit gorilla.guide to download free IT educational resources. These are full ebooks, very lengthy and high-quality resources, and again, all completely free. Just go to gorilla.guide in your web browser. The hashtag for today's event is Gorilla Guide SaaS, or GGSAAS. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter and me, David M. Davis, as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media YouTube, Facebook, and 10 on Tech podcast. You can do that using the social media icons on the top right-hand side of your console. And of course, we're posting all of our latest and greatest content on LinkedIn, so make sure that you follow us there. Now, before we get started, I want to talk briefly here about the state of software as a service, or SaaS, adoption and protection. The use of SaaS applications is certainly on the rise, with 94% of technical people surveyed across small and large organizations using SaaS applications. Everyone's using SaaS, whether it's Office 365, Teams, Dropbox, Salesforce, Google Apps, and more. In fact, of those surveyed, there were 34 SaaS apps being used on average at the typical company. That's a huge number of SaaS apps that you need to think about protecting. Another staggering statistic here, 83% of company work will be done in the cloud in 2020, and much of that will be using software as a service applications. In fact, 70% of CIOs are attracted to cloud-based SaaS for its agility and scalability, according to one statistic from Deloitte. But unfortunately, 52% of IT pros said that they don't back up their SaaS data. And 79% of IT pros even believed that their data is protected by the SaaS provider. And I'll give you a hint, in most cases, it is not. Unfortunately, 1 out of 3 companies out there using SaaS will lose their data. That's 33% of companies out there that will lose data, and that's a sad statistic. And that's why, in my opinion, this event is so appropriate and so critical for IT professionals out there to learn how to select the right SaaS backup tool. Again, on this event, you'll hear from experts at Spanning, Druva, and Clumio. So with that, let's kick it off. And now I'm excited to introduce our first presenter. That is Mr. Steve Siegel, Head of Product Marketing at Clumio. Steve, take it away.
Steve Siegel, Head of Product Marketing here at Clumio. I'm going to walk you through our presentation of choosing the best SaaS backup tool. The first thing I'm going to do is make a little bit of a modification. The bottom line is we think that SaaS, authentic SaaS, really has to be a full service. And if you're using a tool and have to work at it and do maintenance and other things, then it's not really a service. And our orientation and how we think about this and what you ought to consider is really looking for that full authentic service. So getting to it, the 6 key questions we think you ought to ask. First, what are your data protection requirements? What are those key critical things that you should start with to meet them? Where and how is your data stored? And if you're in the cloud, you're probably using Snapshots or Snapshot Manager for some or part of your data protection. You got to understand what they're really designed for and areas where you might be getting beyond their design point. Obviously, from a data protection point of view, we always talk about backup and that kind of thing, but the most important thing is when you do need your data back, how hard is it to get it? And then obviously, what's it all going to cost you, right? There can be, particularly in the cloud, hidden fees, hidden charges, things like that. You want to have a good idea what this is all going to cost you. And then finally, what's the support experience? Who does the support? What's going to be in your responsibility as a customer? So let's get to it. So first, starting with those first key and core requirements for data protection and retention over the long haul. You've got to start with that. So from the point of view of data protection requirements, these requirements have evolved over a long period of time. Our key point and our key thought is look not only at operational recovery, data recovery, and compliance and retention, because those likely are the requirements you're going to have to go ahead and meet, but look for a single cloud native service that can help satisfy all of those. If you have different tools, different stacks to manage to cover each of those separate requirements, or those requirements are not adequately covered by the tool that you've used, you're going to have difficulty from the point of view and challenges to overcome in terms of complexity that's going to drive up cost and risk for you. So that's an important consideration and certainly something at Clumio that we figures in very heavily into how we design our service. Second question, where is your data stored and how is it stored? A key consideration. Now, what underlies this assumption is basically taking the data protection to where the action is, where your data is to support your applications, your analysis, and your collection. So we believe very strongly that your data needs to be stored in the cloud. You have to have a good central purview to be able to manage your data where it is and know that it's protected. And the way we've done that is with our architecture, we've split our control and data planes. And what we do is keep a control plane in the cloud to keep track of where all the data is. And we land data planes, in this case in AWS, right, to be close to the data that's in the cloud. In AWS, we're going to eventually support Azure and GCP over time. But the bottom line is, with that capability, as that data starts to move, you know where it is. It's likely going to be as close to the action as possible, which makes it very efficient from the point of view of the simplicity to manage it, managing multi-cloud environments, which a lot of customers are either implementing now or heading toward, and that you can have predictable costs, avoid hidden charges, and that you can do efficient data transfer. Very key and critical. Next question, right? Look at what you're doing from the point of view of your use of snapshots. Are you using them for their intended purpose? If your workloads are running in the cloud, you're probably using snapshots in some form or fashion for your data protection. It's a lot of what is out there, right? Well, the net of it is snapshots are designed for and work very well for operational recovery. They have some challenges from the point of view of complexity and managing scripting, but for the most part, they do work. But where things start to break down is that if you're trying to use them for data recovery, those scripts that you're using to manage them, as you manage them across multiple hundreds of accounts for data recovery, gets very complicated, right? And then if you take it to long-term compliance, you have to look at the economics of snapshots in the cloud and realize that their cost is 2 to 5 times that of the equivalent amount of storage in S3. That gets ridiculously high from the point of view of your data retention costs, particularly if you have to go out to 7 years or beyond. So those are very key and critical things that you need to look at from the point of view of your strategy. And if you have a snapshot manager only type of strategy, you're going to have some challenges that you're going to need to think about from the point of view of data recovery and long-term retention. Okay, next, how hard is it to actually retrieve your data? Again, why do we do all this backup and data protection? We hope that we never have to use it, but when you do need to use it, you want it to be there. So I'm going to give you an example from our service that supports Amazon RDS. And if you look at traditional approaches of being able to restore databases and bring them back from traditional archives, there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of complexity, and it takes a lot of time. Not the kind of situation you want to be in when you really need to get your data back. And in the cloud today, with people using cloud archives, it's gotten better, but it can still take days. You have to rebuild, reinflate, and then start searching. It can take days. Well, at Clumio, what we do is we build a logical backup that you can query. And then as soon as that is fully seeded, you can start querying that data. That reduces the number of steps, it lowers your costs, a lot fewer errors, and it's a lot faster. Literally, you can restore data in minutes. Now, with the rest of the services that we support, we build a global index and catalog. So that capability to search files, emails, folders, et cetera, all the way up to full mailboxes and VMs, and be able to pull the data back when you need it, right, as quickly as possible without the rebuild and rehydrate and all that kind of thing. That's the core, one of the core tenets of the service that we've built. So from the point of view of a key question here, what is all this going to cost? In the cloud, there is potential for hidden costs, egress charges, files getting stored in your local production accounts, increasing your cloud bill, and you may not even be aware of it. So there's a lot of potential there. So you really got to know what's going to drive your costs. This is an example for our support for AWS. We support RDS and EBS. We can offer customers who have data, longer-term data retention requirements, significant savings in year one, up to 40%, and those cost savings continue to grow over the years. And those are hard dollar cost savings. Those are the things your finance people really are interested in seeing. And the point of the matter is that from the way we price for predictable costs. So in our VMware service, our support for VMware, we price by VM. We don't price by consumption. And for Microsoft 365, we price per seat per month, the same way the core services consume. So we make it very easy for customers to understand what their costs are going to be. Next and final question: what's the support experience? Right? What's the level of support that you're going to get? Is it part of the service, and how much is it going to cost you? Well, our belief very strongly is that proactive support has to be integral to the service. We don't charge extra for the base level support. We do have a premium offering. But the key of it is, instead of the customer logging questions and tickets and doing the troubleshooting, Clumio is an authentic SaaS. We provide that service. We actually, the lion's share of the cases that get logged are ones that we actually log. We provide a combination of real-time active monitoring with human proactive support and automated support. We're often triaging issues that customers have before they're even aware of them, and then pushing out updates and things that they may need for fixes, for new functionality, no patching, no testing, no maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So to summarize, this really works out from the point of view of the philosophy, but it's based on what we think is really important to consider as you're looking for enterprise cloud backup. It's got to be easy to manage. You got to know what your costs are going to be. It has to be architected and designed to bring protection to the data and where it is, and scale on demand as you need it. And you need the peace of mind of knowing that your security and compliance are all going to be well taken care of. So with that, I would encourage you to come to saas.clumio.com, AWS Data Protection, and learn more about Clumio's Enterprise Backup as a Service. Thank you very much.
Great presentation, Steve. Really appreciate that. I've just brought up the poll question that says, what additional information would you like about the Clumio solution? And I'll leave that up for everyone to answer here for just a few seconds. All right, thank you everyone who answered the poll. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Mr. Matt McDermott, Director of Product Marketing at Spanning. Matt, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Matt McDermott. I represent Spanning Backup for Office 365. I'm the product director and the director of product management for Office 365 Backup for Spanning. I'm also an Office Apps and Services MVP. I've been around the Office space for a long time. Spanning is a Kaseya company. We're a leader in SaaS, cloud-to-cloud backup, proven and trusted by more than 10,000 customers. And with our Office 365 suite, we protect organizations from losing SaaS data, because the truth is organizations lose SaaS data every day. In fact, in a recent study, 77% of companies that use SaaS applications suffered a data loss incident in the previous 12 months. Spanning Backup for Office 365 is written specifically to protect Office 365 from the ground up. We wrote a SaaS application to cover your calendar, contacts, email, OneDrive, and SharePoint. We offer backup and restore. We offer automated as well as on-demand backups from any point in time. You have granular point-in-time restore to preserve folder structures. We also offer cross-user restores for administrators, so that if you're offboarding one user and you want to onboard another user and seed their OneDrive with the previous user's OneDrive content, you can do that. If you're in a compliance situation where you want to take a set of emails and restore them to a compliance officer's email box, you can do that as well using cross-user restore. We protect SharePoint Online, team sites, group sites, and all site collections associated with Microsoft Teams. We have transparent reporting with immutable audit logs, and we also offer unlimited storage in our data centers. We also have an optional dark web monitoring feature that allows you to protect your users against compromised credentials found on the dark web. What Spanning Backup for Office 365 does is we monitor the domains associated with the Office 365 tenant, and when we receive the payload back with the users and potentially their passwords, we present them in a way that administrators can have that conversation with the users about reused passwords, compromised passwords. This helps you protect your Office 365 tenant from password compromise, but also protect third-party applications like adobe.com, Bitly, Facebook from compromised credentials that might be available on the dark web, even though those aren't the passwords for your Office 365 credential, for your Office 365 tenant. They're still out there on the dark web, and they allow you to protect those third-party applications, even though the credentials are not necessarily compromised in Office 365. They might represent a threat in other areas of your internet presence. So let me give you a demo of what Spanning Backup for Office 365 can do. This is the Spanning Backup for Office 365 tenant. From here, I can see my users and the status of their backups. I can open a user and view their backups. In here, I can see Aaron has mail, calendar, contacts, and OneDrive available, and I can choose messages from his inbox to restore. Anytime I'm working with a user, if I want to, I can also trigger an on-demand backup. We do a once daily backup every 24 hours, but on-demand backups can be run at any time. In this case, let's say that Andrea Adams has lost a file. I'm going to go into her OneDrive. I'm going to try to find under her personal folder her birthday list. So we'll go ahead and open that up, we'll check it, and we'll choose to restore it back to her OneDrive. Since I'm logged in as an administrator, I can either restore it back to Andrea Adams, or I can choose a different user to restore in that cross-user restore scenario. So we'll choose Next, and I'll choose Restore. While that restore is happening, I want to draw your attention to the fact that we do back up SharePoint. In fact, we do granular backups of SharePoint site collections. If you have site collections you either don't want to back up, or you want to stop backing up because of some contractual obligation you may have, we provide you with that level of control. Of course, most customers are going to want to back up all of their site collections and automatically back up new site collections. That's as simple as checking this box, and then you're done. Your SharePoint environment is completely backed up. As I said before, we also offer dark web monitoring. Our dark web monitoring feature looks at the domains that are registered for your tenant, and then using our compromise engine figures out whether you have users that are compromised on the dark web. We present the username, the password if it's present in the compromise, and the origin. This allows you to figure out whether or not more users might be impacted. So for canva.com, for adobe.com, and Share This, I have several users that are associated with those particular compromises. If the users are found in Azure Active Directory, then we put a little icon next to it to show that they're live. If they're protected by spanning, we put a shield around them. But you'll notice that some of these are not found, but IT operations is actually an alias. So it makes sense that it's not found, but it's still available over on sharethis.com. You can filter in most of our screens to be able to find out what users are in your organization and how they need to be managed. Later in 2020, we're going to be bringing about features to be able to mitigate these and manage them so that you can trim down the list after you've had the conversations with the users. So let's go back to our backup. If I look at our backup history, I'll see that I've got backups that are completed. And if I look under activity in the past, I can see that Andrea Adams' OneDrive restore was completed. I'm going to go back over to OneDrive and show you what this looks like for Andrea. We create a restored on folder so that I can see what date her restoration took place. And right here is her birthday list, right back in her OneDrive and ready to go. So Spanning Backup for Office 365 prides itself on being easy to use for administrators, but it's also easy to use for end users. Because if Andrea or Aaron were to log in and view their backups, they would simply see this UI without all of the administrative features down the left navigation. This allows your end users to perform their own restores without having to go to IT, file a help desk ticket. They can perform those restores themselves for their own mail, calendar, contacts, and OneDrive, whereas administrators have access to SharePoint, dark web, and other things like the settings page. On the settings page, you can set a daily status email. This will send you a daily status for your tenant. We also offer a flexible retention policy for all objects that we protect. If you don't want to take advantage of our unlimited storage, but you want to have just 2 years of storage, then you can do that with our retention policies. We also offer an API token that allows you to do API integration for license management. And then we have alternate admins. We automatically bring in the admins that are global admins for Office 365, but our spanning admins are people who are not necessarily global admins, but they can be backup admins. So all that said, Spanning Backup for Office 365 is a comprehensive solution for SaaS backup. We take SaaS backup very, very seriously. We offer end user self-service. We're purpose-built and cloud native. We're designed for SaaS. We're fast, super easy to install. You can head over to spanning.com and see our 93-second install video. There's no hardware to install, no network or bandwidth or data center space that's required. It's super easy to install. We're powerful. We're easy to use. We have the lowest total cost of ownership in our class. Spanning's unlimited storage and retention, end user functionality, ease of use, and powerful administrative capabilities with the cloud native benefits make us the lowest TCO in our class. We're also the most secure and compliant. We use application level security with OAuth 2.0 instead of service accounts. We also have integrated dark web monitoring for compromised credentials. We're proven and trusted. We're in AppSource, we're on the Google Marketplace, and we have top customer rankings as a G2 cloud leader. With Spanning Backup for Office 365, we try to make it as easy as possible to be able to sleep better at night and know that your Office 365, G Suite, or Salesforce environments are all taken care of and backed up. So I encourage you to check out a trial of Spanning. We offer a free 14-day trial of all of our products at spanning.com. Thanks.
Great presentation, Matt. Thank you so much. I've just brought up the poll question that says, what additional information would you like on the spanning solution? And I encourage everyone to answer that. I'll leave that up for a few seconds. All right, thank you everyone who answered the poll. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Mr. Max Lindauer, Corporate Sales Engineer at Druva. Max, take it away.
Thanks so much, David, and thanks so much, everybody, for joining today. My name is Max Lindauer. I'm one of the engineers here at Druva. And today I'm going to be talking about how Druva can help you redefine, repurpose, and just improve your overall data protection strategy by using the power of the cloud. And so to get started, I think it's pretty clear, just to lay the groundwork, that the world is changing around us in IT and in other ways. But in terms of cloud architecture and how public cloud is influencing the IT stack, this is not a niche player anymore. This is something that is permeated throughout the environment. And when you ask leaders within IT, where are they looking for public cloud to cause improvements? Where are they looking for places to potentially cut on-prem costs? Most of them believe the best opportunity is in storage. And if you think about storage costs going down year over year, there's no place that they've gone down faster than in public cloud. AWS, 60% price decreases on storage costs. And data sets themselves are growing exponentially. So you need a way to manage all of this data, especially backup data, in a way that makes sense long-term. And a lot of businesses obviously are moving away from their on-premise data centers without a clear plan on exactly how to do that the right way. And Druva is going to be here to help not only with the migration, but also just with utilizing public storage, public cloud for backup with a completely different pricing model, a completely different architecture than you may be familiar with the legacy model. And if you think, like, why are customers coming to Druva? Why Druva compared to the other solutions that you've seen today? Druva is a cloud-native SaaS application that enables really fast scaling of your backup sets. There's no capacity planning. There's no box. Because of this model, there's no large capital expenditures. This is an OpEx. This is a subscription-based service. And again, because we're hosted on AWS, we have a global footprint. You can send particular workload data to particular regions and control exactly where your data goes in a way that's compliant with local data sovereignty laws. And obviously, this is an evolved solution in an evolved ecosystem that just requires a lot less work on breaking and fixing and more just on outcomes. There's no patching. There's no replacing spinning disks. This is just focusing on backup for what it's really for, which is for recovery, right? And when you think about why Druva, how does this all work? Druva can become not just backup, but really a historical data lake across multiple different workloads, whether we're talking about end user data like endpoints or cloud applications like O365, G Suite, Salesforce, Slack, data center workloads like VMware, Hyper-V, physical servers, databases, SQL, Oracle, or even cloud hosted workloads in AWS like EC2, RDS, and Redshift. Bring it into the Druva platform. Because Druva is a SaaS platform, we manage the storage, we manage the backend infrastructure. There's no egress costs to bring data in or out. And not only is there backup and restore and orchestrated disaster recovery, there's also added features around governance like compliance, monitoring, defensible deletion, legal hold, e-discovery, archival, as well as just intelligence around analytics on the data, understanding if there's any non-critical data or data that's been encrypted, powered by machine learning as well. So this is a really powerful platform that focuses on backup and restore as the methodology to get data in and out. But there's a lot of other things that you can use it for beyond just backup and restore. And if you think about, how has backup been done traditionally? You've probably heard this from a few of the other vendors today. You have some form of backup software writing off to third-party hardware, or maybe a purpose-built appliance writing off to archival storage like disk or tape, sending it offsite to like Iron Mountain, or you go to a dedupe appliance and you replicate that to the colo. And a lot of solutions, they do tie to the cloud. Like they can archive data directly to S3 or to Azure Blob. The problem here is that this is not a cloud-based offering. This is an archive. It's treating the cloud as a virtual tape library. And so the data sets will compound. It's not very scalable. Now you have to manage multiple different environments, your cloud environment, your third-party hardware, your software, as well as dealing with cost surprises, right? If you're going to pull terabytes of data directly out of S3, the storage itself may be cheap, but the cost for transfer could be quite a surprise and not expected, not budgeted. With Druva, this is all managed as a SaaS offering. Backup directly to the cloud with Druva. The way this works is within the Druva architecture, first we scan the metadata of the workloads, VMs, databases, files, bring that up to our centralized metadata table in DynamoDB. From there, we're cross-referencing the duplicate blocks of data, and then we're able to do global source-side deduplication across all your sites, all your data sources. So we're only actually ingesting unique data directly to the cloud in an incremental forever fashion. You can have backup data go over the local network to a local cache and then go to the cloud, but this is optional, not required. If this cloud cache server were to break for whatever reason, the backups themselves would still go directly to the cloud, to S3, metadata sharded to DynamoDB. Both of those are stored in immutable block level storage. So if you had ransomware on-prem and we backed up those systems, there's no underlying OS. There's no place for that ransomware to then execute and encrypt your retained data. So you're air gapping your backup data offsite, allowing you to be able to recover in the event of ransomware, and then even archive to cold storage for long-term retention. In the same way you would be going from like production to secondary to tertiary storage, like disk or tape, we're mimicking that just directly in the cloud from production to S3, archive to disk. And then we do have an orchestrated DR as a service offering, so converting like VMware, VMDKs on-prem into offline EC2 instances. Every time a backup comes through, that'll update that copy, one click. And this DR plan has predefined boot order, instance type, networking allocations. And I think it's important, not only can you fail over and then you only are paying for the compute if and when you need it, but you can actually do an orchestrated fail back to prem as well, so that all of the changes that occurred during that DR spin up were captured and brought back to on-prem, like during a maintenance window. So there's no data loss. And then once this is offline, there's no compute costs that you're incurring. So it's a much simpler model. This is what the cloud was really built for. It's elasticity, it's scalability, it's security. And then there's some guardrails against those unpredictable costs like egress, and all powered by global source-based deduplication. So at the end of the day, the only thing you're paying for with Druva, there's no maintenance, there's no licensing, there's no capacity or storage costs. It's just what is the post-dedupe data set in the cloud, and then that's consumed on a consumption basis based on the post-dedupe data set across all of your sites, all of your data sources. And this is all managed in a very simple user interface. You can get this deployed quickly in 15 minutes, use global policies. This is not something you need a PhD in to manage. You know, it's like the O365 of backup compared to Exchange on-prem. And because all of the data is centralized, there's a lot of visibility, a lot of analytics, and insights on that data that you can then take action on based on what you're seeing within the platform. And a lot of questions I get generally are around latency, around performance. How can this work so well if you're not using my local network? And the key really is going to be the source-based deduplication, as well as that incremental forever process. And we see oftentimes not only that it works well, but that the performance is better, faster, 2 times faster than on-prem for MFX for SQL and VMware. Same for GulfMark and TRC. Saw a radical improvement around NAS backup, as well as resiliency around ransomware and the ability to recover not only files, full systems directly from the cloud to on-prem or into the cloud through our DR orchestration. And I think at the end of the day, the ability here all comes down to flexibility to meet your recovery times at the right place in the way that makes sense. So whether this is going directly from the cloud to on-premise, whether this is going from the local cache to your local host, or this is going from Druva Cloud into your own AWS VPC through our DR as a service, you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of options to restore exactly what you need where you need it without a lot of those large capital expenditures to pay for the worst case scenario before anything ever does actually happen. And honestly, like, this is America, at least where I'm based here in Denver, Colorado. Like, dollars make decisions. And so Druva can help customers save a lot of money by eliminating hardware and software, by giving that storage efficiency through our global deduplication, through the archival into Glacier, as well as just reducing the amount of human resource time spent babysitting backup. Because this is SaaS, this just works. This is a set it and forget it type of solution, and allows you to gain a lot of insight from that data beyond just the typical backup and restore scenarios. And because, you know, we're built in the cloud, we're powered in this ecosystem of cloud native SaaS solutions, we can integrate into AWS for the Snowball Edge for seeding, as well as that DR orchestration, allowing you to get an RTO of minutes, both to a production environment or to like an isolated test and dev for QA and quality analysis. And again, so the reason customers are looking and choosing Druva, it's about performance. It's about the ability to scale. It's about security and peace of mind. I think that's really the biggest piece around data protection is feeling confident and comfortable that your data is offsite, air-gapped, and recoverable no matter what happens, while reducing cost, reducing the amount of time spent managing, and then giving you a solution that can integrate into a lot of the other solutions you're already using. ServiceNow for ticketing, we have open REST APIs available for integration through identity management solutions like Azure AD and Okta for SSO, as well as e-discovery platforms like Xtero and many others, not to mention the DR as a service. And I think, it's good to be skeptical of new solutions. That's kind of the right way to think about it. And you should be certainly skeptical of someone like myself, who has Druva literally lapelled to their shirt. But I would suggest you take a look at what our customers are saying. And of course, Forrester put us as a strong performer for data resiliency. Always great to get some good words from those industry analysts, but also just what are customers saying in G2 and Trust Radius and Gartner. Our NPS score, industry leading 88 NPS score, beat our previous score of 86. Very high ratings. Customers love it. Backup is not something you want to babysit, not something you want to spend a lot of time managing, but it's certainly something that's important, that it's working well and that your data can be recovered if and when you need it. So I appreciate everybody for sitting through my presentation today. Excited to hear your questions and look forward to seeing and hearing from you on maybe a personalized demo of the solution. I'd love to jump through and kind of show you how it all works, even let you trial it out and evaluate it to see if it would be a good fit to reduce overall costs and overhead around data protection. So again, thank you so much. My name is Max from Druva.
All right. Thank you, Max. Really appreciate that. Really cool presentation. I enjoy so much learning about all these different SaaS backup tools. I've just brought up the poll question. The question on the screen here is, what additional information would you like about the Druva solution? And I'll leave that up for just a moment here before we kick it over into our Q&A session. I want to remind everyone one more time to check out the handouts tab. We have links there to Clumio, Spanning, Unitrends, Druva. All the links are in there. So make sure you check that out. And of course, don't forget that link there to Gorilla.guide to download free ebooks on enterprise technology. If you haven't got your question in yet, if you have a question about these tools and protecting your SaaS applications, now is the time to get those in because we are just about to start our Q&A session. All right, thank you everyone who answered the poll. It is now time to kick off our Q&A session. I'll be joined here by Steve Siegel, again, Head of Product Marketing at Clumio, Matt McDermott, Director of Product Marketing at Spanning, and Max Lindauer, Corporate Sales Engineer at Druva. We'll kick it off with Steve.
So Steve, question for you. Why do I need to worry about data retention in the cloud? Doesn't the cloud take care of that for me?
Yeah, the key here is, it's a great question. The key here is you have to read the fine print. If you go look at it, whether it's Microsoft 365 is a great example, or AWS, there's a thing called the shared responsibility model. And the net of it is point-in-time recovery and long-term data retention is the data owner's responsibility. Ultimately, we built the Clumio service with that in mind. It is the customer's responsibility, and that's exactly what we help with.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for clearing that up. Next question. If my data is stored in the cloud, isn't recovery performance an issue? They're saying here that they've heard horror stories about how slow cloud recovery could be.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's one that we get a lot. And that's where it comes into, really have to give it to our engineering team and our CTO and our chief and our architects who've really designed a very smart system. What we do is since we're built natively in the cloud, We leverage all the performance and compute resources that we can bring to bear. But in particular, what we do is when, let's say, we're restoring a VM, back to on-prem, if you will, in a VM environment. Basically, what we can do, because we index the data, we know all the blocks that are changed. And we use this technology that we've developed called reverse change block tracking. So when we go ahead and do a restore, we are only restoring the blocks that have changed since the known good point in time recovery target. And that's all that we restore. If you look at a lot of other vendors, what they wind up doing is doing a full restore of a VM, and that's what takes all the time. And by the way, it also uses up a lot of bandwidth. In addition, we're very efficient from the point of view of doing an in-place restore, so we don't have all the overhead of rebuilding the VM. So that combination of features and capabilities, reverse change block tracking, in-place restores, and also capabilities that we have around bandwidth throttling. I mean, the best way to avoid performance issues is only restore the data that you need, not everything that you need and rehydrate after the data is landed. So again, we apply some technology and some very clever architecture and development to make sure that performance is not only good, but in a lot of cases we have customers telling us that our recovery performance is actually faster than some of their on-prem tools. It's a bit counterintuitive, but that's what our customers are telling us.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. That's fascinating. And like you said, it can be counterintuitive, but it makes sense now that you explain it. Next question here, they're asking, you show how you eliminate the complexity of data restores for databases, but what about other virtual machines and files?
Great question. So from day one in our service, we've built an index and global catalog of all the data and metadata that we back up. And so we make that what we do is we make that searchable. So it's easy for customers to go find, the email headers, the individual files, folders, mailboxes, or even full VMs, and you can find and validate the one that you're looking for and then decide to bring it up or restore it. So the point being is that we make it a lot easier to actually find the data that you're looking to restore, and we save time and performance by just restoring the data that you need, but helping you find it more easily instead of doing the typical needle in the haystack approach of taking a guess on where it is, restoring an entire mailbox or VM, and then hunting and trying to find it and find it. Well, it's not the right one. You have to go to another. That has significant performance benefits.
Excellent. And then finally, this last question here, they're saying, do I understand correctly? Does your service really include support? It's not extra?
You do understand correctly, yes. Again, we've built this as enterprise backup as a service, and with that comes the service. The monitoring, the troubleshooting, the triaging, the notification of issues, et cetera. That's all part of that same base service. That's what we think people's expectations are in their personal lives and in business about what SaaS really means. It's what we call authentic SaaS, and we think that's part of the service offering. So it's an integral part, as we've said.
Well, thank you so much, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, David. Look forward to getting this out in market and seeing what response we get to it.
And now let's do some Q&A with Matt from Spanning.
Matt, the first question I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you get this a lot, is what's the pricing model for this?
Oh, it's great. We make it really easy. All of our products are $4 per user per month. So the licensing is based on an annual contract, works out to $48 per user per year. If you want dark web monitoring, that's an extra 50 cents per user.
Nice. And so how many domains are actually protected by the dark web protection?
So we license dark web by the user. So if you have 100 domains and 50 users, we're still only going to charge you an extra 50 cents per user per month, regardless of the number of domains.
Excellent. Okay. And there's another question here about data retention. How long do you archive or keep this data?
By default, we have unlimited retention. As long as you have a spanning license on a user, we will retain their data. But we also offer flexible retention rules. So for instance, if you have a 2-year retention rule on mail and a 5-year retention rule on documents in Office 365, you can mirror those rules in Spanning Backup for Office 365.
Nice. And another question that came in, they're asking, what SaaS platforms does Spanning support?
So we have 3 products. I'm the product manager for Office 365, but we also have Spanning Backup for G Suite and Spanning Backup for Salesforce.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Matt. And now let's move on and let's do some Q&A with Max from Druva. Max, the first question I wanted to ask you is there a data reporting tool built in to identify what's stored where, as well as the retention policy?
Yeah, I think one of the best things about the Druva solution is it puts all of the information that you want and you need right at your fingertips. And so from the central pane of glass, you understand where exactly your data is. You choose the region, and the backup data is triple replicated to 3 separate data centers in that region. Metadata, like I mentioned previously, is sharded or split and isolated in DynamoDB. And then the workloads are added to a policy, like in the question was asked, where you can see in one place the retention in a grandfather, father, son schema, the frequency, the bandwidth limitations, and the schedule of that job, as well as things like what's the change rate per workload and growth rate, and split across the environment across different workloads like SQL or file level or VM level. Great question.
Excellent. All right. And the next question here is, what security standards do you employ for protecting the data?
Yeah, so all of the data, this is a great question because with SaaS and with backup especially, really important to keep in mind for security. So all of the data is encrypted in transit through TLS 1.2 and at rest through AES 256-bit. We use what's called dual envelope encryption. So there's a unique key that's used for your data. Druva does not have access to the back end, cannot decrypt your data. We don't have access to that key. Even if we were subpoenaed, we couldn't access your data. We also can't reset admin passwords. So we certainly recommend you have at least 2 people internally set up as administrators. Now, in terms of specific security compliance regulations, there's quite a few, and so I'm sure I'll miss them, but things like SOC 1, 2, 3, ISO 27001, HIPAA, Trust EU, Safe Harbor. This can even be FedRAMP certified by using AWS GovCloud on the back end, and then the Druva solution itself is FedRAMP certified as well. And then there are certainly others that I missed, and so I apologize. If you have particular compliance regulations that you're curious about, would love to talk to you. Security was built into the very backbone from the start with Druva. Our first customer was NASA, and so we had to get it right the first time, and we've continued to grow not only in the federal space, but with biomedical companies and HIPAA data insurance companies across multiple verticals. So yeah, great question. And if there's any other specific security requirements that you want to talk through, just shoot me or Druva an email, and we can certainly talk through it and make sure it makes sense.
Excellent. I did not know that. First customer was NASA. That's very impressive. Here's another question about ingress and egress charges. I know this comes up when we talk about cloud-based data protection. Are those included with this consumption model?
Yeah, short answer, yeah, they are. I think that's huge. So not only are you're only going to be paying for the post deduplicated storage. So say you had 10 terabytes of data on-prem, instead of having to buy a 20 or 30 terabyte storage appliance, with Druva, that would be deduplicated source side. You're probably only going to be storing at the end of the day with changes close to like 4 or 5 terabytes. You're only going to be paying for that 4 to 5. And then on the transfer out of Druva, because we own the storage buckets and we're one of the top storage partners within AWS, we're storing over 300 petabytes of data post dedupe today. There's an economies of scale benefit that we achieve being that top level partner that we pass on to our customers just by including it in the overall pricing model. So there's no egress costs from Druva passed on to our customers. And in terms of like just speed and efficiency, I think it's important to note that all of the deduplication itself does occur on premise at the source before traversing the network. At the end of the day, that's really what allows this whole process to work well without any on-prem architecture or hardware needed.
Awesome. Great job, Max. Thank you so much for answering all those questions about Druva.
Thanks so much, David. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming.
All right, cool Q&A there. Lots of good questions and lots of good answers. Thank you, everyone who submitted a question. For those who submitted questions that we aren't able to get to, we will have the presenters get back to you on those. We, of course, really appreciate all the questions. Just want to keep this a relatively short event. It's now time for our 3 grand prizes. We have 3 $100 Amazon gift cards. These are going out to Richard Costello from Illinois, William St. Croix from Kentucky, and Bryant Godfrey from Idaho. Congratulations to the prize winners. Best of luck to everyone on future events. After this event, you'll be redirected to our events website where you can register for upcoming events from Actual Tech Media. I hope that you learned a lot about how to protect your SaaS applications. Again, don't forget to check out all the resources there in the handouts tab for more information. Look for information in your email from Spanning, Clumio, and Druva. I hope that everyone learned a lot and had a great day on this event. Once again, hope you'll subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast, and we'll see you next time. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.